What's up, my NABUers? Look at this. I'm at my cabin again. What's that, an Apple II? Oh, no, not that. Commodore Drive, Macintosh. Ah, there it is. Aha! Ooh, she's dusty. It's been in storage for a long time. It's been a year since I made a video from my cabin about the NABU. And I got that monitor I was using last year. Oh look, there's my old Atom box. When I bought an Atom, it came in the box, but the box was so friggin' big I didn't know what to do with all the styrofoam. So I flattened it and threw it in my storage room here. There, so I picked up this CRT. This is a different one than the last video that I published. In the other video I published, this CRT, this is a new one. The other one was quite a bit newer. Like, this is new to me, meaning. But I haven't used it yet, so we're gonna try it out and see if it works. You know how hard it is for me to be inside right now. It is gorgeous out there. The ice is melting. Ah, man, I miss being here. Now I have to ask myself the important question. Did I bring an adapter? Oh, look, I brought two. This one, oh, this one looks like the one I was using for the keyboard. And I have a keyboard here, so I should be okay. And this is the one we want. Perfect. Video killed the radio star. Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. Oh no. Oh no, oh no. Oh yeah. I feel like I just sounded like the Kool-Aid guy there. Do you work? 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 Boom. Actually, that's not a bad picture. And I'm surprised I don't get as much flicker as I was expecting. Now, if I click and focus onto the screen itself, we get that, but you can't tell, but I'm clicking on my phone on the side over here, and the flicker goes away. And I'm also set for 24 frames per second. So that's pretty close. It seems to be working pretty good. Oh wow, that started right away. I didn't even get a chance to film it. Just downloading the disc. I know there's, it's kind of funny. I see all these comments on my YouTube where people are like, it's called Cloud CPM. Cloud is someone else's computer, you're storing all the information. But it's kind of funny. It's explained on the NABU C website, but the only portion of cloud that I refer to when I speak about Cloud CPM is the component between the internet adapter and your NABU. Those are the only, that's the cloud, like this is the cloud. The only reason why it downloads files is to make it easier for you as a user so you don't have to provide your own. So when you load it, the A disk, the B disk, and just the A and B disk, they will automatically update whenever I update them so you get the latest software. And if you don't want that, then just put your A drive in your store folder. My documents, and you have a NABU internet adapter folder and a store folder. Yeah, throw your discs in here and then it'll never be overwritten. Anyway, back onto our show. So I should have a version of NADOOM, if everything works correctly, on my C drive. I haven't tried this actually in real hardware, so we're gonna see if it works. Oh, look at that. Nice. Cool. I love moving between everything. Watching the walls come up. Cool, and then you get your little map in the corner. So we can turn the map on and off by hitting M. And it says here if you press H for help. So we can increase our FOV, which is your field of view, decrease your field of view, increase your speed, increase your depth. Depth is how far it'll render. And oh, I missed that. Hear the static? Oh, that's so cool. Okay, and then your movement, of course I had to use the WSD, and then you could stop yourself with spacebar. So I didn't add joystick support. I was having a bunch of complications with the joystick and interrupts, and the screen was flickering and it was going mental. But you don't want to see something really cool? Okay, so we got the help open, right? Now watch this. I'm still driving around. Isn't that cool? So the help's open. I don't know what the point of it is. But while the help window is open, you can still move. So I'll close help. There we go. And then we can turn our map, like I said, off so we can explore better without seeing where we are. And of course, if you turn our map back on, you can see it shows you the direction you're facing. So as I'm turning here, you can see that my little arrow is also rotating. Isn't that wild? Yeah, so for the little machine, little NABU that could, it's doing pretty good, I'd have to say. Oh, it's kind of neat too. You get to see a reflection of me in the window, in the window to vintage retro land. Let's take a quick look at what I published yesterday here. Oh, look at all these scammers, eh? Every time I turn on, look at this. Every time I turn on YouTube or do anything or build NABU software, there's always someone out there trying to scam somebody. Okay, let's take a look at my videos. And here is the video that I published yesterday. So what you'll notice in this video here is that my NADOOM, first off, ignore the sound because obviously I added that later. That little AY chip in the NABU ain't playing that music. That was just a sneaky edit on my part. But you can see here I did everything in single color mode. There was no real shading on the walls. The map kind of worked up in the corner. And yeah, and you compare that to what we have now. So I did this last night. I read all of your comments. There was only one person actually had a really valid point, which was, hey, you already made a proof of concept, move on to something else. And I appreciated that actually, but I couldn't let it go. I needed to add some color. I needed to add some text. I needed to add some depth to the render. I needed it to look good on a CRT. That's pretty much it. So this is our first CRT test. And I have to say it looks pretty decent considering I don't really know how to create great graphics. You know, you've seen me draw in Notepad, or Notepad, in Paint, and I can tell you, and you can tell me, drawing is not my skill set. So there are more things to do in this map though. Let's see if we can find some more stuff. Yeah, because I think what I did is I created like a maze lower down. It's a pretty big map, I have to say, and I can make it a lot bigger actually. Probably will do that. We'll see how far we get with this, how much more I add to it, because it'd be neat if I added the ability for you to create your own maps, which I guess I can. Sure. I would also like to add, I mean, you could add enemies. There's nothing stopping me from doing that, I guess. Okay, let's talk about field of view for a quick second. So if I push, I think it was 1 and 2. Yeah, so 1 will decrease my field of view and 2 will increase it. So you see what's actually happening here is I'm shrinking on the horizontal plane, on the x-axis, we're tightening it up so that, like, you can see this little wall here. So if I tighten that up, my field of view, so if I try moving towards it now with a really tight field of view, everything's a little closer. So it's kind of hard to see where the walls are and the doorways, but if I open it up, you get a little bit more of an opening. Now, we also have the ability to choose our rendering. I believe that's, what did I say? Let's check the help. The depth is 5 and 6. So if I decrease our rendering distance, you can see how things slowly start disappearing into the void. And then as I increase our rendering distance, you can see how things start coming back. And it's adding more depth to it. Isn't that wild? So I'm really increasing the depth now, so we got quite a bit. Like, that's nice. So let's see. Yeah, some of you might prefer a little bit more depth. It depends on your preference, I guess. I might open up our field of view a little bit more here. There we go. If you're interested in how ray tracing works, I suggest watching a video. Sebastian's got a great video, and I think what's interesting, because the best way to explain how ray tracing works is this picture that he had posted in his video here, where you could see all these people looking at the dragon, and you can see their field of view. Okay, this is their field of view. This is the width. So as the ray gets farther from the point of the eye, then you end up, it opens up further and further. So as I was doing earlier when I was tightening the field of view, the width from this point to this point was actually shrinking. Uh-oh, DJ's got, as I said earlier, notepad. DJ's got paint open. What's gonna happen? All right, so let's talk about a couple things here, just to explain how this works. And only because it's Pi Day. So really, I mean, it's not the day that pi was just discovered. It just happens to be the date. Of course, everyone remembers what pi is. It is the ratio of the circle's circumference to its diameter, right? So you have its circumference and its diameter, and you can divide the two, and you always, in a perfect circle, get 3.14159263. I know there's people out there who could recite the whole thing without knowing. I just say 3.14 or math.pi. So 3D in software on a computer is a little bit weird because you have to use pi. And of course you need to use pi because you need to understand what a sine and a cosine is so you can get angles. So first off, we all remember what a sine is. So if we were to draw a sine wave, let's make it thicker. Tell it your sex tape. Okay, so if you take a circle, and you always know what a sine wave looks like, right? But if you want to know what a sine wave looks like because from a circle, well, think of it this way. If you took the circle and cut it in half and moved it like this, we just created a sine wave. Okay, now a cosine is the inverted of a sine wave, which means that when I move this, it starts at the bottom rather than the top. So if you take a sine and a cosine and you put them together on the x and y axis, then you end up having, and this is your y axis and this is your x. You end up being able to calculate degrees. So you put sine on the x-axis and cosine on the y-axis. And if you calculate those two, you can figure out degrees from a center point. So all you need to do is multiply that value, so you multiply x by sine times pi, y pi, and then you multiply that by what you want your radius to be, and you can figure out how far away it is from the center at whatever angle you choose, if it's 35 degrees or what have you. So that's important to understand because how ray tracing works, and this is, as you can notice, it's very similar to how Wolfenstein is working. It's not quite the NADOOM reason because there's no z-axis. However, if you have a grid and this is your map, so it's an array, and in your array you decide that you want to make walls. So let's say your walls are a symbol, well, we'll just draw red and say these are walls. Now you want to decorate inside, so you want to say put a block here. Okay, so this is an array, and this array has, of course, your x-axis here and your y-axis here, because it's a two-dimensional array. Now we want to place a player, so let's put a player right here. Now this is an integer array, meaning that the very first row here would be 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, right? So this player is currently in position on the x-axis 1, on the y-axis 3. So we also now need to know the angle. So what is the player facing, what direction? So in this case, we have this 35 degrees, so let's use that. So by calculating with using the 35 degree value, we can now turn that into an x-axis and an x and a y-axis by multiplying it by sine and cosine. In which case, we now know that this player is looking through these grid, these items in the grid, in the array. Now that's just a single ray trace. So if that's like a single field of view. That means there's no width to it whatsoever. So all you're going to be able to get is all zeros, and then you're going to get a value because there's something in this cell, and then nothing, and then of course you can keep going. Now you want to keep going, which is interesting because you need to be able to put stuff behind things. If you don't know what's behind it, you don't know how much of it is behind it. So therefore, this would disappear. So you need to actually ray trace through objects entirely. And that's why it's very CPU intensive, because you don't just stop when you get to the item as the first object. You don't do that. You have to keep going. And then what you do is you make a collection of these items. So we add some sort of list. So we have this is position 3 and it's position 2. So we go 3, 2, and then we have another item at, this is a 4, this is a 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, my grid is not equal on both sides, but that doesn't need to be. And then this, of course, is x-axis 5, it's a comma, and then comma, 0. Okay, so now we know these cells in which something is detected. And then after, what we do is we create this massive list of these. So we have a field of view, which means we're now going to multiply our 35 degree angle. Let's say our field of view is something like 0.5. So if you multiply 35 by 0.5, I don't know, I'm a programmer, not a calculator. So what that really means is you're gonna get some numbers, some angles that are wider than this 35 degrees. So what you do is you loop a for loop through this range, and you scan a number of these throughout the whole range. And then what you do is you take all those values of the objects you've detected through this range that you just scanned through the ray trace. Remember, you're scanning this array, you add all those values to this list. Then when you're done, you take this list and you sort it. And the reason why you sort it is because when one of these rays runs, and then the next one runs, the next one runs, the next one runs, they're going to go inside of the list in the order of which you scanned. In this case, you're generally going to go from the smallest number range to the highest number of range. So say a field of view is 5 degrees, we're going to go that far. So you're going to get values of objects that are behind other objects in this list. So then what you want to do is you want to sort that list after you've created this giant list of all these detected objects in your way. And essentially that's about it. Then all you have to do is figure out how you're going to be rendering it to the screen. And there's multiple ways to do that. In this case, because we're only using X and Y, so we, on our 3D world, we have an X and a Y. So this, of course, being our Y, because we're looking towards the depth in this case, and our X, because we're looking left and right. Now, it's said to be 3D, so you think there's a Z direction, but really there isn't. That's what's sneaky about Wolfenstein and what we're doing here. The depth is the distance or the size of the object we're gonna render based upon these the distance. That's it. We're not actually in a virtual world storing 3 dimensions. At no point are we. We are storing a depth of a distance of how many cells away something is from the viewer, from the guy that's from your character, and then you render all these different objects behind it because you sort it. That's essentially it. There's not a lot to it. Now, the reason why you don't see this very often on computers is because, like old computers, like the NABU uses a Z80, which is an 8-bit CPU, even though it has some 16-bit registers, but and it can access 16 bits of RAM. You don't see it very often because the most expensive part is this scan, this ray trace scan, because you have to loop through an array, and your depth determines how far. Remember, we talked about depth, we can adjust it. That determines how far that ray trace is going to go. And then of course your field of view, like I mentioned earlier, determines how wide that field of view is going to be, right? So that's expensive. The other thing that's very expensive, which a lot of people take for granted when you do math on a 8-bit processor, is you only have integer values, which means you only have numbers that are whole values, like a 0, like a 1, like a 2. You don't have a 1.5. This is called a float, or in newer terms, a double, which is double size of a float. So you only have numbers like this, and you can only store inside of a CPU register a value between 0 and 255, which is an 8-bit value, 256 values. Now, I did mention that there's a couple 16-bit registers, and you can kind of do math on those 16-bit registers, but you're limited. But still, that's still an integer value, right? So what's difficult with a computer is, an 8-bit computer, is doing floating point arithmetic. It's extremely difficult. And imagine having to do that with, essentially, you'd have to do that all on paper, and you don't have any decimals, and you have to, it's hard. If you ever look at how it's done in assembler, it's difficult. So the complicated thing needs to be made fast. And a long time ago, in 1999, I think it was, or around that time, I was just starting to get obsessed with old computers. And I was also spending a lot of time in California for my job, and maybe it was a little bit later, or I don't remember, but it was early, that's all I have to say. I was young, that's why I don't remember the exact year, but it was a long time ago. And what's interesting is that I came across Space War at the Computer History Museum. Now, the Computer History Museum at the time was not what it is today in California. It was just a warehouse, and it almost looked like some guy just owned it, and there wasn't a lot there. They didn't have the PDP there, but they had information about it. So, interesting enough, I met Steve Russell, and I actually, I should post a video at the end of this video if I can find it. I'll look for it. I'll do it. I'll make sure I promise to do it. He actually turned on a PDP in the Computer History Museum and turned on Space War for me. Well, for a group of us, not just me. Not that important, but it was pretty wild. Anyway, so what was really interesting when I read the story about Space War is they talked about how, in order to have the orbiting of gravitational in the center and have the missiles move in this trajectory as well, they needed to use sine and cosine. Everything we just talked about, right? They needed to create some sort of circle, and they needed to understand degrees. But the sine and cosine on the PDP, because again, it is not a floating point, it's for floating point arithmetic. And even if it did have some sort of floating point calculation, it still would have been very CPU intensive. And so what they did is they created an array. So they actually ran a sine wave calculation, created a table, and they referenced that table. As you can see here, that's exactly what I did. So here is my C# code for calculating the sine wave and the cosine. Okay. And what I had done is I created an array of sine and cosine of 360 degrees of those, and that's my lookup table, which means once I generate that on a real PC, I get these approximated values. Now I can because they are multiplied by 100, these are actually are decimal values, but they appear as integers. And I don't have to, on the NABU, treat them as floating point. I can treat them all as integers and then scale everything appropriately. So I learned that technique from reading about space war on the PDP. And of course, with newer computers, that's never been something I considered using. I mean, at what point would that be a useful thing in today's age with GPUs and computers running at gigahertz speed? So running with the Z80, of course, that's what you have to do. Now, one of the great things about the NABU, and to some criticism who don't seem to follow my intent with the NABU, but my family's history with the NABU is based upon a vision of a computer that connects to an internet of things and allows you to remotely process, remotely send messages, download software, etc. So I'm constantly, and I know I use the word cloud, and I explained this earlier, that the only real true cloud that I refer to is this internet adapter to the NABU itself. And the reason why I refer to it as the cloud is because you have to remember, this thing, this internet adapter, that software you download, whether it's mine or somebody else's, this is what runs not at your house when you owned a NABU. This ran somewhere else. This ran on a server far, far away. If your house was here with your little NABU and your little smokestack and you're connected with your computer, well, what's really happening is you have a phone line or a cable line in the system that's running all the way across someplace to someplace to someplace to some big building, and this is how the internet works, to some big building that has inside of it a big computer. And that big computer is storing all your information, feeding all your information, and that big computer has a lot more storage than you do, especially back then in 1983, 1984. That big computer also has the ability to back up things. So if you lose something, it's there. So really, when I refer to cloud CPM or all the cloud stuff I'm doing, what I'm referring to is this thing, this internet adapter. This thing is the cloud, because this is what is simulating the computer that would run here. A lot of people think this is simulating the cable modem or the cable adapter. It's not converting zeros and ones from your computer into analog signals for the cable modem. That's what the cable modem would have done. So while I thought this was clear for those who wanted to read anything I wrote and took the time to write on NABU.ca, it's there. But, so what I'm doing is I'm actually doing a lot of calculations on the actual internet adapter. So I'm actually calculating and assisting the processing of all this on the internet adapter to allow the Z80 processor to relieve a lot of its duties. And this is what the map looks like. And this is fed to the NABU from the internet adapter. So you can see here that, as I talked about before, you have your array. So this is created as a string to make it really easy. Otherwise, I just have to do it as a byte array. I'd have to have a ton of commas, and every single value has to be a character and cast to a byte, and it would be terrible. So this is very efficient, and it works just fine, and allows you to be able to edit it in real time. That's what I'm saying. I think I can make it so you can create your own maps. Of course, we can make this map even bigger if we wanted to. So when you talk about how this array is working, that's exactly how this array is working. So if my character was someplace down here facing this direction, it would scan through all of these cells to be able to get all the objects that are in its way. As promised, let's visit the Computer History Museum. I've been going there for a long time, and it's interesting that not a lot has changed. I'm looking at pictures here. I didn't go back any further since 2011, but it's interesting that there isn't a lot to change because the history doesn't change, minus the fact that we now have a NABU, right? That should happen. We should see a NABU sitting someplace, not on the sluggable section, but someplace in here. And there's some great stuff when you look back. They have an Enigma machine. That's pretty wild. And so many old goodies to look at. Look at that, an Apple One. And of course, they have a little tiny robot section, which I think they feel that this is somehow representative of the history of robotics in the sense it is. I mean, they got a Heathkit Hero here, an Omnibot 2000. This is I have one of these, Tommy something. There's a box, you can look at one of my other videos, there's a box of it down there in my basement. I think it's the one I did with the Fairchild. Yeah, so I mean, there's some pretty cool stuff. I think what they're missing here is that one that Nolan Bushnell created from Atari. That was kind of cool. Oh, there's a picture of Easton in there. Don't worry, we're getting to it. We're getting to it. You've probably seen this one. I know there used to be a video on YouTube. Well, it's still there, I'm sure, but it showed like what the future would look like, and it had some lady using this computer for recipes. I remember seeing the actual YouTube video before I even saw that device. And then this is neat. There's an actual full room where you get to go inside and see the IBM 1401. Like I think I don't know. Is that part of the 360 series? I can't remember. There's a lot of smarter people on here than me that will know. I think this is fascinating. This is like one of the first uses of a punch card. I think this one was actually, this was a census bureau, created for the Census Bureau in like the 1800s or something. So essentially there's a whole ton of pins in here, and you put your card in and you close it, and based upon where the contacts are, it just increments one of these dials, and then that allows them to be able to calculate the census. I mean, it's easy for us to think of today, but like remarkable for its time. So, oh look, there's me pretending to play Spaceboard because it actually wasn't hooked up at the time. Or maybe I am playing it. Let's see. I don't see anything on the screen. This is neat. I have a friend named Dave Matthews. I met him in Vancouver at a conference many years ago. And when I was living in California, we got to hang out quite a bit. And I always like to hear his stories because he went through the most amazing history in the .com era. And he was the creator of the product called the QCat. And for those who don't know, this was the thing. This was like, well, the internet cat's meow. And he was collecting checks from those like Steven Spielberg and people. He would just go to meetings, and he would just have millions upon millions of dollars of checks in his pocket, and he would just be going to the bank and depositing checks with, if I recall, I don't even think there was, they had a bank account at the very beginning or something, and he had all these checks and he had nowhere to deposit them. But of course, as you know, the story with all .coms, kaboom, it busted and it did not fly. And this is one of those QCats. So if you ever come across one and now you kind of know the story, Dave Matthews is a pretty approachable guy. He likes to talk about it if you ever reach out to him. Well, yeah, of course, I love the Sage. Sage is to me, one of the most fascinating computers because it was a network. It was a network of computers for defense. And of course, you could see these Sage terminals used in tons of movies, including Stargate. Yeah, like they were using Stargate. I feel like they used one of these in something else. Superman, I think Superman it was used in as well. So that's kind of neat. And a Cray. This is just a trip down memory lane, everyone. I mean, we're just gonna have some fun here. You could have turned this video off a long time ago. Oh, here's an ENIAC. It's wild. I think this is awesome as well. I mean, that's not an ENIAC. There was a ENIAC, and this is not the ENIAC. This is just a few components of the ENIAC. Who knows what it was? Maybe it was something, a component of some sort. Oh, here's my little biggest fan. She owns her name is Sandra. She owns the gift store in the Computer History Museum. So if you ever go there and see her, say hi to her for me. Ever since COVID, I haven't been down, and I miss it. I mean, I've been down, but not to the extent where I was living there and traveling. So here we go. This is great. This is it. This is the video I'm referring to. Look at this. This is real. And there they are. And look at how similar he looks. He hasn't changed at all from the picture I was showing earlier. So what they're doing in this video here is playing music.
Now, you may ask, how did I get sound out of this thing at all? And the answer is they let me attach wires to 4 light bulbs on the front panel. Okay, this machine has 6 program flags here, numbered 1 through 6. For purposes of music, I took numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 and called them soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. Look at one of these 4 lights. Well, give it a moment. Sometimes the light is off.
So what I was going to say is, a lot of you at the beginning would have thought right away, because of the Altair 8080 and the AM radio trick, that maybe that's how he's playing music. I bet you weren't guessing that he was simulating pulse width by digitally switching on and off the lights, the incandescent lights. These are not LEDs, incandescent bulbs, flicking them on and off, hook them all together, create a little mixer, and suddenly you have music. So he's flicking those on and off as fast as he can to make different different tones. I think that's remarkable. Actually, having the filament inside of the incandescent bulb probably helps with a little bit of capacitance as well. So that little bit of capacitance allows the pulse width to not have to be as fast, and maybe kind of rounds out the waveform as well, I bet. So pretty neat. Now, I thought I had a video of me playing. Maybe I don't on here. I must not have uploaded it, but I do have a video on my phone of playing Space War. Well, I'm glad that you came for this little ride with me down the road of 3D on the NABU. Maybe I should, you know, I know, like I said, it's NADOOM, right? And it's supposed to be like everyone says, can it run Doom? Well, hell yeah. But maybe what I should do is consider adding like power pellets or something and turn this into like a 3D Pac-Man type game. I guess there's a bunch of different ideas I could do, right? I would like to work on this further for sure. So multiplayer maybe even, wouldn't that be fun? A multiplayer Pac-Man of some sort, or a hide and seek. Uh-oh, we're losing the screen with the CRT trace with the scan line. Oh, there we go. We're starting to get some back. Okay, anyway, enough of my ranting and just chatting. Let's end this video, and I will see you on Discord, because there's the new Discord channel and I'm actually on there. So I recommend you come and say hi. Okay, take care everyone. Bye-bye.